Welcome everybody to Dimension. I'm your host, Paul Perrillo, with your invitation to come along in the next half hour on a colored gem safari, a chance to unearth luscious gems from their ancient resting places. And while we would all like to travel to some faraway land like Bolivia or Brazil, we have brought to the Comcast studios geologist Cynthia Markison from the Cynthia Company. Cynthia frequently travels to the ends of the earth in pursuit of colored gems. Cynthia is also here as part of a colored gem safari taking place this week at Wayne Jewelers in Ardmore and Wayne. Cynthia, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Paul. I'm happy to be here.
You have got to have one of the most fascinating, interesting careers of all the people that I've interviewed over these years on this program.
Oh, there's paperwork involved too.
You mean it? There really is. I mean, I would think you just get your bucket and shovel and go off to a mine somewhere and start looking for colored gems.
No, it requires more than my passport.
You've traveled to some far-off, exotic places, and while the greater Philadelphia region isn't exotic or far off, you're here to share really with people this week your knowledge of colored gems. And I guess these colored gems that we're talking about are things that we're all familiar with, but I guess people really don't have an understanding or appreciation, Cynthia, how a colored gem becomes a colored gem. I mean, you don't go into a mine and just find these things laying on the ground, do you?
No, they don't hit you over the head and then say, come get me. No, it involves much more than that. Colored gemstones are really new to most of the consumers. They're aware of ruby, sapphire, and emerald, but what we're trying to do is let people know that it goes way beyond that, that there are many different types of colored gemstones available, that you can get a quality colored gemstone in any price range, and that diamond is not the rarest and most expensive gemstone.
As a follow-up question to that, is it because there aren't any rubies, diamonds, and sapphires out there that we know about now, that now the industry is looking for perhaps another product to find and market to the consumer, or are there still rubies and sapphires and diamonds that are out there?
There's abundant ruby, sapphire, and emerald. In fact, there's more and more finds being found. You can think about sapphire that comes from so many different places, Sri Lanka, Burma, Cambodia, Nigeria, even the United States and Australia, many, and those are just a few localities, many. And take a gemstone like tanzanite, which is very beautiful, but just from one little locality in the small East African country of Tanzania. And it's not that there is a dearth of ruby, sapphire, and emerald. It's just that our society in general, we are very individualistic. We are open to color and want a medium to be able to express ourselves with passion and to bring, beauty to our everyday life.
You mentioned the diamond, and I guess everybody thinks that the diamond
is forever?
Diamonds, well, I'm sure some women would say diamonds are forever.
Yeah.
But I guess the diamond is the rarest gem.
No, it's the most well-known gem. It's not the rarest gem. Diamond, like gemstones, like any other, could we say, commodity, are priced by supply and demand. So De Beers is somebody who controls the supply of diamond on the international market every year, and of course boosts demand by a diamond is forever. Everybody wants it, so it keeps the price up. A gemstone, say, like this beautiful gemstone ametrine, very rare, just from one little mine there in Bolivia. So the supply is very limited, but the demand isn't as high because the consumer doesn't know about it, so the price it gets is not as high. So it's a balance of all those factors.
How do you hear about these gems, or the fact that there's an expedition? Are they called expeditions when you go into a mine and start looking for gems? How do you hear about these things?
It's just like any other world, probably like the television world or any other industry somebody's in. There's a grapevine. It becomes a small world in many ways. So you get in it for a while and you get to know things, and you have your friends and your associates and so forth, so things open up. I heard about the ametrine mine last year. I was in Las Vegas at a trade show, and somebody wanted me to meet somebody who owned this mine. They thought maybe I could do some work with them, and I was resistant, but nevertheless I did meet somebody in Las Vegas who owned the ametrine mine, and I ended up working with him, going out to that mine several times. And through him met an emerald mine owner, went out there last month.
Well, let's talk about the term geologist. When we hear of geologists, we think of these people that are in the Rockies or in some mountainous terrain, and all they're doing is just chipping away at the foot of a mountain. But
or ugly fat women.
You said that, I didn't, so they could send all the letters to you. Let's discuss what a geologist actually is, and what do they do?
Well, what a geologist is, at least what I should say what geology means for me. The Earth holds many, many riddles to it. And I travel around a lot. Wherever I go, it seems like I have a friend with me in the rocks. They may seem inanimate to most people, but to me they tell stories, and they tell of the Earth's histories and passions and trials and what's happened now. Now, how I apply that to my field is that with geology, we study how rocks are formed. So I am aware of how these crystals are formed in the Earth. I can go out to the mine site and work with other people there to develop a strategy for pulling the gems out of the mine, how they're found. I can tell whether the gem is natural or synthetic, what's happened to it, where it comes from, and so forth. Optics, I can understand how light interacts with the gem and how we can best bring out that beauty by different cutting.
Do you get any negative feedback from people that say, well, this is, nature, it is, Mother Earth, it should not be touched, and yet there are people that are going in and chipping away at rocks and taking away part of that beauty, that natural beauty?
You're talking about if there was strip mining or something that would make an area ugly? No, actually, that's not the main question I get. Most of these gemstones come from third world countries where actually they can afford to be able to pull the gems out of the ground, and they're not large-scale strip mining. They're, for the most part, underground, so it's very clean that way. Most of the concern I get is from people, say, who are concerned that there's exploitation of third world people and so forth. That's the main question I get.
When you find out that there's a find, and you travel, and you have traveled to some exotic and faraway lands, most people would think that you just walk in and as we said at the beginning of the show, that these gems are right on the floor. But you have to work under some, I guess, adverse conditions, I guess, to really get to what it is that you're looking for.
Oh, that's true. I mean, and I come in after the mine's already running and developed for the most part. People spend years and years and hundreds of thousands of dollars, everything they have, to be able to get something. This emerald mine, this was an emerald that came out about a month ago from an emerald mine I was in Brazil. But to get inside this mine, we had to go get an inner tube, cinch the middle of it so it's 2 loops, stick your legs through it, be lowered down 150 feet on a winch system hanging in the dark, and you go through a waterfall while you're doing that, so water falls on you. You get to the bottom, there's water about up to your knees throughout the whole thing, and the only light in there is from an extension cord that's coming down from the top with a light bulb on the end of it. So we're going through the mine owner, and the mine owner isn't that savvy to science and so forth, and he's carrying around this light bulb with an extension cord going through the water, and we get to an area that looks really slippery. So I said to my friend, wait, let him cross first. It looks like, what if he drops this in the water? So we get to the other side. I don't speak Portuguese, but my friend said to the miner, have you thought about what would happen if you dropped the light bulb in the water? And he said, oh, no problem, the light bulb will be fine. Obviously it's like dropping the hairdryer in the bath.
Exactly.
Classic Murder, She Wrote.
You mentioned the mine owner, so I guess when you're talking about elevations below, the Earth's surface, you almost have to wonder, how do these people know what they're sitting on, or what the territory?
They don't always. I think that a lot of it at first is a lot of luck. They'll find some gemmy area on top of the ground that it's weathered through and got a gemmy area, and try to pursue it from there. People who have an idea of how to apply systematic research will prosper, because it's not just and have we found anything, blast and have we found anything, as this emerald mine is. If you apply geology to it and try to put some structures and understand what the keys are geologically where you find the gemstones, then you can do all right. But that involves more education and science and more money than most people are able to put out. So
are most of your precious stones then found underground and not necessarily on the surface?
Most are underground, right.
Once the precious gems are found in a very rough form, what happens to them? Because some of the jewels and the gems that you have brought here are literally gorgeous. I mean, they sparkle. They're brilliant. So. But they don't come out like that. You're coming out of these. You're coming out with rocks, a rock formation, more or less. Correct?
I come out with a rock formation, but use this ametrine mine as an example. It's just from one mine, as I said, in Bolivia. But think about what it takes to even get out there. There are 100 men working there. It's like a little city, and they're very well cared for. They make about double what they'd make in the city. They have medical insurance and so forth. But for me, I go on the fast boat, and that takes 7 hours, through the jungle to get up there just on the boat. But it's really nice to me because it's very exotic, and you can hear the parrots screaming and the monkeys and the alligators and everything. Then you take another 2 hours to go 15 miles in a four-wheel drive to get out there. So that already represents a tremendous amount of work and money that goes into just pulling the gems back out to get them processed. You pull the crystals out, they're anywhere from here to perhaps this size. Now, not all of that is the gemmy central area that we would facet, and then we hammer out something that would look like this. Just rough pieces out of those big crystals that we can then subject to faceting, and here's what some of the final product would look like. So a lot of work does go into it, just from the idea of, hey, let's start a gem mine, to bringing it to Wayne Jewelers here in Ardmore and in Wayne.
Yeah. So I guess it's all relative depending on the size of the crystal, how many precious stones you can actually extract from.
The size and the clarity of the crystal, the beauty and purity of the colors.
Are there any crystals or any stones that you would probably discard in your excavations and say, oh, no, this really isn't what we're looking for, or it really doesn't meet our standards?
Of course, yeah, many. In fact, my gems are more kind of hand-selected. I pick the finest pieces of rough and have award-winning cutters in the United States cut them to really bring out their life and their beauty. I would say most gemstones don't meet the standards of what I want to be able to offer people. They're really kind of lackluster, not inspiring.
Where was the most unusual location where you found precious gems?
Oh, probably, I don't know if it would be the most unusual, but it sounds funny because we're talking about these other places, but in my own backyard, I live in San Diego, and San Diego happens to be gem rich, and that's how I started, was being a gem mine geologist in a mine in San Diego. So that was just around the corner, so to speak. The most unusual one would probably be way out there in Bolivia, where you can sleep in the hammocks at night and you can hear, I grew up on Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdom. Did you ever used to watch that? But it is Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdom. You hear all those sounds at night, all that, all that kind of thing. Sure. It's wonderful.
Yeah. The reason you're here in the greater Philadelphia region, as you mentioned, is that you are conducting a gem safari for customers that would come into Wayne Jewelers in Ardmore and in Wayne. Tell us a little bit about what, I guess, you'll be talking to people that come into the stores.
To introduce them to really the wide variety of gemstones that are available. Most people aren't aware that there's many, many beautiful and rare gemstones, say, that are green besides, and that they can get the most beautiful green tourmaline for, say, $300 in a carat size, whereas an emerald, that would mean nothing. We have pictures, and the store will be decorated with pictures from the mine sites and giving them an idea of what the people are like where gems are found, what it's like to pull them out, with descriptions, pieces of the rough, and so forth. And then I will be there to answer any question they might have on any type of gemstone usage, and they can pick through really a whole selection of colored gemstones that most people never have an opportunity to do, to find something that really, I think the gemstone should really make your heart dance, should make you feel good when you got it.
You had mentioned the one stone here, the
ametrine?
Yeah, the ametrine. Is this a new stone that we're beginning to see in the marketplace today?
Right, you are. It was available, say, prior to about 3 years ago, sporadically, because it was in an area that was illegal to mine. And this is an area where people would go in kind of like poachers and pull some gems out and then leave, so it would be up and down throughout the market. Starting 5 years ago, somebody legally purchased the mine. It became legal in Bolivia to mine it, and he's developed it. So it is the first time that ametrine is regularly available for the consumer. It will have a regular presence and be able to establish itself as a known gemstone. But to most people, probably like you have it before now.
Right. You mentioned the fact that in some locations it is illegal to do this type of mining, and I guess with all due respect, there are probably people that disobey the law of the land and do things that they really should not be doing. But I guess you and the people that you work with make sure that every angle is covered, that before you go in, that you are you're doing this and everything is on the up and up.
Right, I don't want any problems.
Yeah, right. But I'm sure there are, just like in any industry, there are those people that are going to try to pull the wool over the sheep's eye. More
Well, right. You said to me, like, I'm an explorer and go to faraway lands, but then you have to think, like, to me, then there are those people who are real cowboys, and do things like what you're saying. There's just all sorts of different, or maybe it's like this, different levels.
When you bring these things back into the country, when you go through customs, what's the reaction? Is there any problem bringing these? The reason why I ask is because people would say, well, it's great, they're going to these faraway...
Get me in trouble, yeah.
They're going to these faraway lands and bringing back all these, these jewels. I mean, it's got to raise a few eyebrows.
Well, there's different countries. Usually I would ship them by mail. And different countries, say Bolivia and Brazil, they're considered the United States developing countries, third world countries, and they want to encourage trade with them. So rough gemstones, there isn't a duty. You have to go through a process, but there isn't a duty. Depends on the country that they're coming in from, whether it's rough, like this, or cut, or in jewelry form.
Okay. When you finally, in the process, polish these precious gems off to the form that we see here, what would people want to do with these? I mean, are we talking about rings, necklaces? What are some of the more common ways that we're
well, I suppose this big one, it could be a ring in Texas, where they wear things big. But I don't think it would be in Philadelphia. It would definitely be a pendant. The others are amenable for both sizes, anywhere from, say, 10 to 12 carats could be a ring or for a pendant. My experience in Philadelphia, people like different things in different regions, My experience in Philadelphia, it would probably be a pendant. What's so beautiful about the way I cut them is that ametrine it's nature's own blend of amethyst and citrine in one gem. The way I cut it is so that the purple and the gold can then also blend to create a copper color. And every way you turn this ametrine, you see a different color, purple, gold, or the variations of the copper. So as human beings, I think what really appeals to us is something that we can't quite put our fingers on. We're always searching, and that's what ametrine does. It appeals to that universal, it's always changing. I want to see what it's like.
This is a natural
Completely
mix.
natural.
I guess we see a lot of synthetic jewels that are created out there, and that's got to make people like yourself that try to bring the purest form of these stones to the public. What is your reaction when you start seeing some of these synthetic things?
Well, I think that there's a place for everything in the market. What bothers me most about synthetics is that often people are advertising them fraudulently or misleadingly, and that's something that drives me crazy. To me, you can't always tell a natural from a synthetic. A gemologist will need to be able to do that for you. That's why you should really buy from somebody that you trust and that you have recourse from. For the most part, to me, they don't look the same. They look too good to be true. It's like looking at, say, like a Hollywood starlet versus a real woman. There's something about that starlet that's a little too perfect to actually be attractive.
We should mention that, let's talk about the dates and the times that you're going to be at Wayne Jewelers in Ardmore and Wayne.
Right.
Do you have that information at all?
I certainly do.
Okay.
I'll be at Wayne Jewelers in Ardmore on October 18th and 19th, and in Wayne on the 20th and 21st.
Okay. People can come in, they can ask any type of question. All sorts of
questions. Okay. See everything, make the selection of the gem that makes their heart sing. Maybe they already have, say, gemstones that they would like me to look at and give them my opinion on what could be done with them.
A person that would come in, I guess if you're coming in and your mind is set on a certain stone, for some probably be a concern, but you really should purchase the thing that you are going to enjoy and love the most. And so often people are bedazzled by all these things sparkling at them, but they really should go with something that they really love deep down inside, and they know that this is really what they want.
I think that there's two different ways to think about it. You have to go with intellectually, all of the different properties of the gem and if it's represented with what it is, and then emotionally. Something might make sense intellectually, but if it just doesn't move you, don't get it. Another thing that just moves you completely, and you're buying it from somebody you trust, I would say go for it, because that's the one you're always going to be thinking about.
The gems that will be on display, will they be on display like this, or will they already be made up in form?
They'll be on display in loose form, and then with gemstones that are already made up. So people will have an idea. They can purchase something already made, or they have an idea of how we can custom make something for them.
Do you ever get offended when you see someone take a real precious gem and then they put it with something that is really gaudy or tacky, and you're like, what were they thinking when they came up with this combination?
I don't know if it really offends me. Probably it can amuse me more than anything, but then I have to remember that they might take a look at my things and think, if something I'm wearing, think, geez, that's not for me.
What's next for you? I mean, do you have any other interesting expeditions coming up in the future?
I'm going to Bangkok in November, so I'll be doing some purchasing there, looking a lot for a gemstone called spinel, which most people have never heard of, but it's been mistaken for ruby many times throughout the reason. Actually, it's one of my favorite gems. People should come in and see it. And then in January, I'll go back out to Brazil, probably go to that emerald mine again, go to a few tourmaline mines out in Brazil, and then back into Bolivia.
I suspect that your industry, your business is never boring because you're always looking for that next find.
Waiting in airports is very boring.
I'm sure for anybody, you're not alone. There's got to be sort of an anxiety level that, you realize what you found. You can't wait till you get it back to the United States and have it, cut the way you want it cut. So, I mean, yes, I guess it gets kind of boring waiting in the airport, but there's also sort of an anxiety waiting.
It's a mixture of anxiety, temptation, and Christmas. But maybe it's how you feel about Christmas, like, oh my gosh, how am I going to pay for all these kids' gifts? And on the other hand, you want to see their faces when they open it.
That's right. When you find out that they, are there any, we've talked about the ametrine, you just mentioned this other gem, but are there other gems that that we don't know that much about that we may or should be on the lookout coming out more and more as time goes by?
I can't really think of any particular new gem, relatively over the last year. The ametrine is a new one. Things that are becoming more popular would be that gemstone spinel. It's very red. The black princess ruby in the crown jewels of Great Britain is really a spinel, and before the science of gemology was around, a lot of people mistook it. You can think of ruby in light as red silk, and spinel would be like red satin. The light moves through it brighter, and since most people haven't heard of it, the price is not at all reflective of its rarity or beauty. I would say in general, colored gemstones are experiencing a renaissance. They're here to stay, and people are becoming open to them in general. I would say all colored gemstones moving beyond ruby, sapphire, and
do we know of, or is there anything that exists here in the United States that is, very much indicative of our geography that we might see as a precious gem?
Well, there's the tourmaline from Maine, which is like a seafoam type green. Tourmaline from California, which is pink. Montana produces sapphires. Some of them absolutely beautiful. Most of them pretty commercial in quality. There's a like a red emerald. I'm gonna get slapped for saying that from our international societies. You're not supposed to say red emerald, but it's a red beryl, which is the emerald family, but red. That comes from Utah. Very small, but very rare.
Does the rarity of a stone then increase the price, or can that also hold the line on price?
Well, rarity is combined with demand for the gemstone. Say red beryl, it's very rare, but not everybody knows about it and is asking for the prices at a certain level. It's not to say it's cheap at all. There has to be, a gemstone has to be abundant enough to create a demand. Say like the gemstone tanzanite that most people on the consumer level hadn't heard of before 3 or 4 years ago. Now, mostly everybody heard about it, so the demand is really increased and the supply is really decreased and the price begins to shoot up. It's an excellent time to buy tanzanite because of that. It's the last of the good times.
The Colored Gem Safari will be taking place at Wayne Jewelers this week in Ardmore, as well as the Wayne Jewelers in Wayne. What a novel idea, having Wayne Jewelers in Wayne. Cynthia Markison will be there. She's from the Cynthia Renee Company. We have a few minutes left in the program. We've been talking about the whole world of colored gems and precious gems, and I guess, a lot of people, again, really don't appreciate the work that goes into refining a crystal, or what we would refer to as a rock. And we're talking about a chunk of rock that is taken from a mine, but how long does it take from the time the discovery is made until we see them as polished gems as they're on display?
Well, say take this with the ametrine mine. It's now beginning to hit the public, just beginning to. It's been 5 years and millions and millions of dollars. As you know, nothing happens overnight.
That is true. That is true. And yet, do they continue to work at this mine?
Yeah, with a tremendous overhead each month.
The work has got to be interesting. It has got to be fulfilling for you, or I suspect you wouldn't be involved.
Oh, I'm glad I do what I do. I feel like I made up what I do, so I'm really happy doing it.
Do we see more companies like Cynthia Renee Company coming around and doing similar exhibitions for customers around the country?
I haven't seen that much. Usually what this attracts is a person that's a very independent person on their own who does this, and they don't necessarily have the desire or the ability to be able to talk to the consumer about it. For the most part, they want to just go into Pakistan or Afghanistan, get their gems, and have somebody else do it. I enjoy speaking to people and explaining, things so they can understand and increase their appreciation.
Well, you are, needless to say, a great spokesperson for the whole geology field, for the whole arena of colored gems, as well as for the Cynthia Renee Company. I'd like to thank you for being with us.
Thank
it was
you, Paul.
a very fast half hour.
I have to
know.
say, for me too.
I've learned more about precious gems and colored gems than I did coming into this program. Now, the key to this is to make sure my wife doesn't see.
I was going to say, so we'll see you there, Paul.
Oh, well, you'll see her, I'm sure. For Dimension, I'm Paul Perrillo. Thanks so much for being with us.